Welcome everyone. Breaking news. The Linux kernel developers, even high-profile ones, finally seriously discuss using C++ in the Linux kernel. What started as an maybe potentially April's Fool's joke in 2018 by David Holtz here from Red Hat, not here. Here's a series of patches to start converting the kernel to C++. It requires G++ version 8 of GCC 8. It's like, yeah, maybe it's April's Fool's Day, I have no idea. But now, some years later, kinda nearly 4 years later, Peter Envin of Cytor.com, a well-known open source developer, and also others chimed in here. Hey all, going to steer the hornet nests and make what has become the ultimate sacrilege. Andrew Pinsky, recently also another high-profile developer, I believe currently at SUSE and GCC, so on. So you see, not some Joe Reddit user, no, serious, long contributing, decade-long history of contributions to open source in the Linux kernel. Realized that was released April 1st, 2018, and either was a joke or might have been taken as one, although I would say the patch actually looks quite serious for, as it was a very sophisticated April Fool's joke, but nonetheless. However, now in 2024, Peter Envin agrees, thinks there is validity to it, going to try to motivate the opinion here. Both C have a lot of development since 1999. Although I would argue C++ more than C, obviously. C++ has in fact, in his personal opinion, finally grown up to be the better C for this kind of embedded programming. And basically I have to say, I've actually said this already, not only grown up, in my opinion the kernel developers are a little bit late. I said this since 2004 already. So basically since 20 years I say this, finally the Linux kernel developers catched on. I even made 4 years ago actually the year I finally hope with YouTube, Patreon and OnlyFans I have finally the financial headroom to work further on my multi-server microkernel. Yet in 2024 the Linux kernel developers finally take C++ seriously. Better 20 years late than never. Of course, some people are already asking, but did they not recently added Rust? Yes, however Rust is entirely different. I would have said, we can also go to the arguments, by the way, in a second. The discussion is long, right? It's not only one email. The people take it seriously, to my surprise. And later, I just read here somewhere, like maybe here, or I think it was actually here, that saying, okay, that was not the one. I just earlier looked at one of, maybe here. This one, where he writes, because Theodor Zoe of also other high-profile contributing Linux kernel people like the author of X2 and the file system, virtual file system switch and other things, someone speak to whether C++ standard committee and C++ compiler implementations are more or less unreasonable compared to their C counterparts regarding compiler being able to arbitrary statement reordering or other random futzing, all in the name of better benchmarks, but which will make life a living nightmare for honest kernel developers. Just seen it yesterday on this channel. Recurringly peak bugs, not only at Apple, but also Linux kernel. To which Peter Envin chimed in here. He suspects that the GCC Clang developers are more motivated these days about such issues, since also I would argue the code generating backend of GCC is more or less the same, whether it's C++ or C, so such worries are probably greatly exaggerated. Previous discussions were usually shut down quickly by Linus Torvalds and other people of holding up their Christian crosshairs, like, go away, devil, with your C++ nonsense. So I'm positively surprised this was somewhat reasonably discussed here at all. And also other directly chiming in here of Andrew Pinsky, who also apparently brought that forward to HPA, that, where's even the freaking email here, probably somewhere. Yeah, let's adding a few things regarding exception and runtime type information, and that the Darwin kernel is also using C++, and so on and so forth, plus of course other microkernels since then. In the past, such things were usually quickly shut down, so it looks a little bit seriously this time. What comes out of that, we will see. All right, I wanted to actually show you the other thing that was probably here, that HPA actually added. He has a lot more to say in response to all of the excellent comments, but he's leaving for a long birthday weekend, and apologies. But oh wait, this was another. He was actually quite someone. Here was this. He had a member of the C++ standard committee reach out to him already and going to have a discussion with C++ standard committee people next week, which is absolutely outstandingly amazing. So the issue with Rust is an entirely different language. So adding Rust, I said this before, I'm actually not the biggest fan of adding Rust to the Linux kernel. I'm totally a fan of more memory type safety, which is why I've done personally most major things in C++ since 20 years already, and named my company, spoiler alert, Exact Code. And obviously we did do everything C++ mostly and Lua for stability and reliability and stuff long before other people even invented Rust. And of course, Rust nowadays is mostly better than C++, also a little bit hard to read. The problem with Rust is, therefore, you cannot just convert the Linux kernel, right? That would be basically rewriting it, and a decade-long process, if not 2 or 3 decades, as long as the Linux kernel is old already. And I would rather be a fan of rewriting everything from scratch, like the Redux OS people, or there's also another second alternative Linux-compatible system written in Rust, which name I currently forgot. So that is a problem with Rust. And so currently what has been added to the Linux kernel is Rust bindings, so that you can build some things with Rust, but not all, right? So you could write drivers like the Apple Silicon AGX Asahi Linux driver, DRM driver for Apple Silicon graphics, or like network drivers in Rust. But first you need these bindings right, and then it's always bridging C code. So the whole kernel still runs, like the kernel core runs in C, and then you have like a tiniest, like if this, then your Rust driver, like if that makes sense, right, whole driver and one tiny red dot of Rust code, whatever you might convert to that. So C++ has the benefit, as seen already in 2018, that you more or less, here from these patches, like yeah, convert, make it build. Basically, C++ mostly a superset of adding more good stuff, classes. Before you cry about object orientation, devil, evil, and stuff, no, actually the Linux kernel already is object-orientedly written these days with k-objects, and just re-implementing like glib and GTK, implementing poor man's C with classes with structs and preprocessor macros and stuff. So you can mostly convert this. It's nearly a superset, except other features added to C++ since then, variable length array, zero length arrays, and other initializer stuff. Also C++ recently catched on, I believe in the meantime, variable length initializers, or also, what is it, the other name of named initializers, whatever the name of those other previously maybe GNU extended things of named initializers or something. So anyway, maybe there's still something left, maybe zero length arrays or whatever, that tricky stuff that Linux kernel developers use. So it's not like you can just compile it, plus of course potentially keywords and other trickery used, and or otherwise. C++, of course, having stricter type checking, and so on and so forth. So going further, there are of course many good arguments that I previously already brought forward here on my channel with my previous 4 years ago building better, more stable, scalable, debuggable, and restartable mission critical microkernels, multi-servers, in innovating actually operating system design in entirely different ways than has classical done for the most part. And I said there already I wouldn't use C, I would use C++ or other variants of that with JIT and so on, because the benefits are just multiple, right? Even templates Yes, the Linux kernel is already using preprocessor stuff for lists and other, like you have seen that just yesterday or literally every other demo YouTube live streams, right? It's not like the Linux kernel would not shy from unreadable macro preprocessor galore, but of course with C++ makes it much more readable, debuggable than C macro preprocessors, and of course less escaped new lines. But of course multiple, so as I'm not making this up, HPA actually writes there, we do a lot of metaprogramming in the Linux kernel, just they use poor man's C preprocessor macros, 2024, yay. Implementing some often truly hideous macro hacks, yeah. Just yesterday I was biting my teeth here on this stuff. They're also virtually, like P3L1 hypervisor calls, they are also virtually impossible to debug. As I just said, consider UXSH type hacks, some of which I designed and wrote in C++. The various casts and cast statements can be unknown into separate template instances. No, why not Rust? First of all, Rust uses different, often in their opinion, graciously. So syntax, in my opinion too, and I recently spoke with friends in the United States, and they do much more high performance enterprise and crypto stuff than I do, and they even use Haskell and other good stuff, and they also agreed like, oh my god, Rust, so unreadable, right? So I was like, it's not only me who has his love and hate relationship with Rust, but other Haskell developers like you. Have you tried to read Rust code? It's like, yeah, I know, I feel with you. Anyway, and not only would all the kernel developers need to become intimately familiar to the level of getting the same kind of feel, and there again, right, C++ is so much similar to C. I mean, it's in the name already, it's just C improved, extended classes, metaprogramming, namespaces, you name it. So lots of stuff. Note that no one there would expect to use all the features of C++, like I always said, just like they have not the kernel C, currently a subset of C11, which is relatively large, set to allow compiler-specific extensions, like kernel C++, which like I said for 20 years, I've done for 20 years, and Apple has done in Darwin and others, which would suggest to be strictly defined subset of C++20 combined with similar set of compiler extensions, and so on, and so forth. Operator here, for example, class, even amazing examples, right? Like if you don't believe what I said 4 years ago live here on this channel, or otherwise in between, or in my summary, go there, probably read this email. What rocks? So here, for example, are here inline template functions which make implementing a lot of things like compile exchange and get user much cleaner. Finally, people with some taste and sense and so on coming to their senses. Much, much cleaner indeed. Finally, we have a grown-up discussion on Linux kernel. I can't believe it. Only took 30 or so years. But it also allows for instructions, things like inline patching of immediates without having to change literally every instance of the variable. Wrote in fact such patch set, probably included the most awful assembly hacks I've ever done. So much too, but C is so readable and stuff like HPPA, like whatever his, I don't want to put wrong, what was macro preprocessing of, not to put wrong macro of hideous macro hacks. And so C for C, simple C for readable kernel code, not so fast, probably includes the most awful assembly hacks. So much to write your kernel in C with the most awful assembly hacks, even the most master Jedi Linux kernel programmers could ever have come up with in order to implement the mechanics. But what really made him give up on what was the fact that every site where a patchable variable is invoked would have to be changed from, say, foo bar plus some init offset to foo immediate at bar. Anyway, inline overload functions which make implementing things like static branch likely cleaner. And I even said my prime example is automated endianness conversion, right? I do low-level firmware driver and stuff, automated C++ template-based automated endianness conversion since over 20 years. Not even, they probably didn't even mention that in this patch set, but yeah, similar to that, and automated endianness conversion, which of course the Linux kernel still doesn't have because it's written in C and nobody wants to use macro preprocessor things for each of their variable accesses. Inline overload functions like branch likely, basically subset of the buff, just and so on. Class inheritance, for example, all the inode wrappers that require the base inode struct to be included, and that has to be accessed with something like inode virtual file system switch inode.i, which, hey, we just edited yesterday for PS3 enablement. Don't forget, share, like, and subscribe for showing some love to PS3 Linux here live on this channel. For those people who remember that, right? This is nice, but it is all fundamentally syntactic sugar. Similar things can be done with anonymous structures, except that C doesn't allow another structure to be anonymously included. You have to have entirely new struct statement, define all those fields. Welcome to macro hell. C is so amazing. Just welcome to macro hell. Anyway, all right, and also here even new and delete. There is no way to pass GFP flags in there yet. HPPA, yes, there is. Void operator new size D count GFP flags T flags and delete whatever k3 v free etc and so on suitable flags and so on. So totally amazing argument, right? I'm not making this stuff up. This is real on Linux kernel. I hope it stays real. I don't have the highest hopes because usually Linus Torvalds gets out his famous finger and Tears dictates every discussion to end at a heartbeat. But anyway, lots of discussions there. No flameworks actually see what does. I didn't read that yet. Can't just need coding statements. You need compiler that refuses compiled stuff. If you want C++ to do what runs good to memory safety. Like kernel C kind of becomes forcing it, but C wasn't really. So anyway, so yeah, there you have it. Let's take look at the comments. So it's basically the summary. People discussing it. It's not dead yet. It's just as alive as being discussed 2 days ago. But again, I don't have the highest hopes, but let's keep our fingers crossed, thumbs pressed, and pray for the best. But if not, we anyway have a microkernel to write. Let's see what comments we have there. Hey, 0 frames, that is amazing. And welcome everyone to this amazing C++ discussion. Sebas writes, OOP object-oriented programming is great if you like writing a ton of boilerplate code that does nothing. That is not true. Object-oriented is exactly what the Linux kernel does, right? So they have new and free and so on. And the K-object, it's basically, that is not true. It's exactly what you encapsulate your kernel data structures with, just that in C++ it's enforced or automated, and you can't forget to constructor and destruct your things, right? So people always hating on OOP are those who do not even see the object-oriented programming. Truth is, people not on the Linux kernel, but even in GNOME with glib, the glib of bringing structs to emulate classes to your GNOME desktop since probably before the year 2000. So yeah, Damien writes, I'm not mistaken, C++ community doesn't like to use low-level C subset and prefers to use some more abstraction. Wonder if this will apply for something as low-level as the kernel. Yeah, Apple does it, right. Even there are L4 microkernel, right? L4 microkernel here. The university, the German University of in Karlsruhe, has written higher performance than Linux microkernel, which higher performance IP3 throughput, and is widely deployed, for example, in the OKL4 kernel labs of some, I believe that is a formally verified variant of L4. And I toyed with those like Pistachio here. I think it was here up until the release of L4KA Pistachio, new version of Fiasco. All L4 microkernels had been inherently tied close to the underlying CPU architecture. The next big shift in L4 microkernel development was the development of cross-platform independent application programming interfaces API that still retained high-level performance characteristics and so on. And one of those was actually implemented, or was it this one? Maybe even, right, L4KA Hazelnut, 1999. Liedtke took over the University of Karlsruhe and continued to research microkernel systems. Proof of concept type performance microkernel could also be constructed in higher level languages. The group developed L4KA Hazelnut, a C++ version of the kernel, as early as 1999 when Linux. I wish there was a future where we would all be running stuff on a microkernel, but anyway, like security and stability and stuff not randomly crashing because only constants change and regressions. So it was done, it can be done, even Apple does it today. Darwin is using a C++ subset. What do you mean with IDO computers, each on his own? What do you mean with Burly Bear, BlackRock, NSA, Hook Hack included finally? What do you mean with that? Wonder how Linux feels about this. Maybe he didn't chime in there yet. Probably, I guess he's closing his eyes, going to some barbecue or diving and stuff and hopes that the discussion ends sooner or later. Didn't see his name in there instantly. But that does not mean whether we can click on some other random people, perhaps. Some doubts. HBA thread. First I thought it rather thread, but now the prof totally convinced. Great university also to contribute code. So the joke, really would like to see C++ permitted in the Linux kernel. It's like SUSE, Rust shouldn't have been. Here, look at that. Is this Andreas Hermann from SUSE? Yeah, so actually he agrees with me. Look at that. Am I here some random dude who does not know what I'm talking about? No, SUSE people write like primary job like mice doing Linux kernel and embedded stuff. In their opinion, Rust shouldn't have been allowed into the kernel tree. Gut feeling, but who am I? I totally agree, but because it's a mess. I said it is a pain to even build Rust for the Linux kernel. Thankfully, we don't need it for anything except Apple GPU yet. Maybe they rewrite it eventually. It is an absolute pain to build. It will remain an absolute pain to build, to support. And they rather should have allowed C++ or whatever transitioning already. And Linus Torvalds should have been so forward-looking to allow C++ over 15 years ago. So I hope this changes now. Prominent Linux kernel developers 20 years later finally agree with what I said for 20 years and 4 years here live on this channel. There are many, many good arguments of other people chiming in, right? Not only the first email, which either was an April's Fool's joke or not, but other people here agreed. It's like, yeah, like GCC, as I said here multiple times on this channel, C++, rewritten some time back. And microkernel options, warning, so on. Eventually they added namespaces here in the discussion, maybe as early as somewhere. Somewhere I thought even namespaces would be quite useful. There even was that, obviously quite some. Which one would that have been? Maybe this needs a view of include all emails in, maybe here. Anyway, you get the idea. Someone in this also chimed in here. Like there was something with init functions. Where is it? Was here. One thing they forgot to mention would be quite useful is careful use of namespaces. For example, putting init functions in their own namespace would, like what I always said, right? Like I repeated for 20 years. So many helpful tools that C++ always offered for 20 years already. Putting init functions in their own namespace would have not only make it a lot harder to call init functions from non-init functions by mistake, calling init functions explicit in a highly visible, I really do mean to do that, However, it also lets to do separate init versions of functions like CPU features enable that contains optimizations that aren't actually usable at init time. Alternatives had not been applied. The idea is not to change the code, but rather the compiler will simply prefer init functions from inside other init functions, aka direct consequence of how namespaces works. Yeah. Mehdi asks, GNU heard a product of Apple? No, but Mach is used, not heard, but Mach, and that goes back to my previous video. Actually made a hour-long summary of the history of macOS. You probably want to go back and watch that. That includes the history of macOS and Next Step that Steve Jobs founded there in the 80s after he was booted out at Apple, and doing a object-oriented Next Step operating system with using the Mach microkernel. And that is, of course, what Apple purchased then in 1998-ish or whenever that was, and brought back as Mac OS X with a finally much improved, stable and secure over the voluntary multi-tasking operating systems they previously had, of memory clobbering application stuff each other. And also additionally, I should say, what other question, maybe we see it again. So let's quickly go over the comments. I promise if I discuss the comments long, then usually the video size doubles in length, and that's not preferable for people to watch. And the YouTube algorithm. Linus must be throwing his desk 180 degrees, totally agree. Why not COBOL? Because COBOL sucks and is not suitable for kernel development. Probably because Linux is free and COBOL developers would like to be paid a lot. Also, actually, fun fact, Linux kernel developers also want to be paid a lot. Gonna write Linux kernel driver and brainfuck. Yeah, if you want to do, then please do. Have fun and don't get brain cancer, right? Trying to write brainfuck. Are these discussions like rewriting the kernel? No, converting that and or gradually using that. That's a good thing compared to Rust, that you don't need to rewrite it completely. You just need to convert it. That would look like 45 or 450 patches of converting, implementing, quirking, fixing casts and const correctness and so on. Garfield says C++ worst idea ever. OO is the worst paradigm as well. That is not true. I don't know where are you even a serious programmer, because most of the things are object oriented, and they are in the Linux kernel. Think net devices, think all the other, think files, inodes, dnodes, dentries, memory management objects. Like basically everything in the kernel is an object, just they do it with poor man's C structs and open coded functions as emulating methods. And so like similar to, you would not, like basically all the object-oriented stuff is, all the UI stuff is object-oriented, right? And obviously not only GTK and Qt, but I mean obviously stuff like you would not want to, like how do you want to write a complex UI, and we have actually implemented our own UI, right? This is an object-oriented UI implemented in Lua, because obviously GTK and Qt sucks. But even in Lua, right, you can use object orientation, like similar to C, C++, Rust, you can use object orientation, you don't have to, but you want to, right, to remain sane and not get brainfuck. I mean, obviously, all those UI elements are derived from the UI class. Here, even in our own implementation, like you would want to do, right? And that's not resulting in you mean object, every file should, X file, for example, should be a class, you mean probably object. But yeah, it's not the worst paradigm ever. Of course, you should not necessarily apply to everything, but in general, object orientation is not too much of a bad thing, as that you just need to use it proper. And people do it in C, just glib GTK, right? Do computers work on some Java code? Yeah, I mean, Java sucks, yes, but that's not because object orientation is good, it's just because Java sucks from the beginning to the end. Totally agree. Totally. I did Java, thankfully, only at university, made rest in peace. And I was already a master in C++ when I went to university, and I absolutely hated Java because it's just a complete fucked up language from the bottom to the end. It's like yeah, it's pointless. The virtual machine sucked. Maybe it doesn't suck as much anymore, except they added 2 decades of other bloat. So yeah, but that's a Java problem, not the object orientation problem. Facts. So sometimes, but still, OOP, some other stuff, makes games and takes for programming languages is best still. You can do OOP using normal C code, that's what I said. Just structs, but that's, I mean, just use structs, but they are wired? What do you mean with structs wired? Weird. Procedural is cool too, but we agree functional is like the PHP of... What do you mean this functional is like the PHP of language programming? You mean like functional programming is the PHP of language programming? No, this is a complete nonsense. Functional programming can actually can make code also extremely readful. You just need to use the best tool and program for your, like for example, crypto and stuff, or other, like lots of this crypto, I mean cryptography, not cryptocurrency, right? You mean the crypto that was crypto before cryptocurrency, that crypto, the open SSL crypto and stuff, like a lot of things you can do much more elegant in this functional programming. And that has nothing to do with being the PHP of language paradigms. The C++ philosophy, no added overhead, actually true. I mean, real world usage actually as fast as C when using its features and you're using it correctly. Yes, it's that is mostly true. I mean, not only you can, I mean, if you use zero overhead stuff, right? Of course, you can a lot of stuff. So runtime, RTTI, runtime type information and exceptions are of course not free. But for example, they can even be faster than C counterparts, right? Like, of course, if you use those, you have some performance penalty, but that is either the same as if you use similar things in C, or even better, for example, throwing exceptions can have or probably has better performance than doing that with set jump and long jump, and right? So, because that is obviously truly horrible C stuff and has obviously not good performance. So yeah, that's basically for this video. We have, of course, that's basically it for this video, just that we have probably 5 minutes of more. Each their own. Problem OP is that not every single thing needs to be oriented around objects. Does not need, but it is. I'm not saying you need to use object orientation for everything, but for many things, that abstraction is a very good one. In the Linux kernel, every major thing is a K object, a kernel object. Drivers, methods, drivers, right? As exposed as objects, as K objects. In SysFS and device nodes, I mean, obviously you want all device nodes automatically registering and appearing in /dev, and you want all your SysFS attributes and stuff automatically registering. These are all objects. If you implement them in C or C++, it doesn't change, right? And if you do this with similar C++ constructs, the overhead is the same as if you do it manually in C, right? It's in the end a functional identical machine code. Of course you can write slower C++ code, but you can also write slower C code, right? It always depends what you are fiddling around there. Microkernel is great, people agree. Program for QNX 4 way back in the days. Yeah, that is why I'm not only with all the Linux kernel constant exchange and regressions, recurring theme here, right? Everything they touch, they break. SGIO2 frame buffer, even AMD IOMMU or X2 APIC, but then even P3 stuff every quarter they break it, right? But I truly miss a highly stable and API and ABI stable microkernel like L4 or QNX. Like, hey, even my car runs QNX. Go figure. But programs, monolith kernels debate between Linux and the inventor of, but pragmatism of multi kernels. The debate between Linux and the inventor of Minix, Andrew S. Tenbaum. Yes, they had some discussions like this, yes. Cheat Klangdi equals C++, best favorite build, C++ standard 17, and I have no idea what precisely you mean with that. Cheat Klangdi, C++, whatever. Can you post the link in the chat? You mean that one? Oh, sorry, I should have probably. Let's, so either that one, I can also put it in the chat, sorry. That one, only read this now. I can try to, maybe that one, that is the first one, in case actually I can also delete the other one if that's not the same. Let's delete the first one because the second one should be, let's remove that. Oh, I can't click it. Google UI, I can't click my own. The futures now need to scroll that. Why can I not? Why is there not? That is bizarre. This UI truly sucks. How can I? Okay, probably there will be more comments that I can pin. Also, somewhat irritated now. Google programming also bugs. Somehow I can't. Why can I not? Somehow I can't select this. No, whatever, I guess. So yeah, probably we should stop, otherwise this video becomes too long for the YouTube algorithm. I probably said everything. We like OOP, but Cloud Parts, Code, C-Base, don't think OP is one size fits all. I never said this. OOP is not one size fits all, but it is helpful in many situations. But C++ is hard to disagree. What precisely do you mean with it though? Appreciate your comments though. No, the really something. So yeah, I guess that's it for this video. Do I see anything? Yeah, people agree, not because OOP sucks, but Java sucks. Yeah, people agree with that, obviously. Not hard to agree with that one. Okay, there was. So then we are mostly through all comments, which is amazing that we have so many concurrent viewers, comments, and shares, likes, and subscribes, Patreon, and YouTube memberships. After that, try to have the program give out. Okay, we had this already. So amazing that. So yeah, we discussed it. We are through all comments, I believe. Hey, this is off topic, but Linux. Just the other day, heard that GPG is getting post-quantum crypto scheme. This soon. Have you heard of that? Is it true? Yeah, people working on post-quantum crypto hasn't OpenSSH already? Are not some algorithms in OpenSSH already supposedly somewhat post-quantum crypto? But yeah, people are working on that. There's also, I probably should make a dedicated video. People have some disagreements there of post-quantum crypto. Best share, like, subscribe. I added to my YouTube to do. Amazing that so many people tuned in. I hope you enjoyed this, learned something, especially that OOP does not necessarily need to suck. And World Economic Forum, you no longer cannot have ownership of your computer, will make you happy. I have not idea of what talking, but I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. Don't forget to share, subscribe, maybe also join over at Twitch for all our other additional random live streams. And have a good day or night, and I hope to see you soon for all the next fun, maybe continuation of